Alright, holy crap, Dr. Adam Tamburello. Been trying to get you on the podcast for a while.
I'm busy.
Yeah, life is like that sometimes. What are you up to?
Currently studying for my boards in a couple weeks and doing my gen med rotations. So I spent all day yesterday in an orthopedist's office just seeing patients and helping take care of them.
Where are you going to school?
Stony Brook.
So what do you have to do now before you graduate?
Just finish up classes. So I have 4 more rotations that I have to do through different doctor's offices. I have to finish up my nutrition class and then take my boards at the end of May.
How long have you been in school?
For this degree, 2 years. In total, about 8.
Like, since high school?
Since high school. 6 years of PT school, 2 years of athletic training.
That's a lot of time training.
Yeah.
And you still have, like, interests outside of, you know, school and stuff, right?
Yeah. I help coach soccer, so I do private conditioning sessions with kids anywhere U6 to U16. Once my boards are out of the way, I'll be studying for my CSCS license. I've got a couple more things on my list.
So with all that stuff, like, one of the things I think that I wanted to talk about was your, like, level of ambition and how you find the time in the day to not just get all that, deep coursework that you're doing done, but also, like, find the time to, like, what are some of your daily habits that help you kind of stay organized? And
I wake up and go to bed pretty much the same time every day. So I'm usually up 5:30ish. Go to bed, lights off everything at 10. It usually gives me enough time to rest and recover and be ready for the day. Before I close my eyes, nighttime routine. Make sure everything's set up for tomorrow, so clothes are picked out. Any assignments that I have are done and handed in. I know what I'm having for breakfast the next day, which is usually the same thing. It's usually egg whites and an apple. It's nothing complicated. And then I do some journaling before I close my eyes.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about, was the journaling.
Okay.
What do you actually journal?
So I've been doing this about 1.5 years. I think I started as part of, like, a New Year's resolution, as much as I hate that kind of term, last year, so start of 2021. And it's basically at the end of the day before I go to sleep. It's usually the last thing I'll do is kind of reflect on the day and then pick 3 things that either made me smile or made me happy, or that I think I'm grateful for. And they're not necessarily always like these profound things. I think one of my, what I wrote down yesterday, I think, was just the opportunity to work with patients yesterday. I'm trying to think what else I wrote. Yeah, it was the ability to work with patients, the ability to work out, so having the physical capacity to come here and exercise, and I don't remember what the third thing was.
Well, it must have not been
Something.
that good, I guess.
Yeah, it was something.
It was like mom and dad.
Oh no, it was the Chinese food I had for dinner.
All right, you gotta stay fed.
Yeah.
So do you never miss that now since you started that? Now it's April, so
I missed probably a few days here and there when I first started it, just because if I traveled for work, I wouldn't always necessarily bring the notebook I write everything down in with me, but I would do my best to either put it on my phone and add to it later, or kind of catch up that way. But no, I definitely have missed some days.
So what do you think the benefit is that you've gotten from doing that?
It forces me to kind of just reflect on my day and on my life, and just try to see the little things. It hasn't happened, overnight. It's taken a long time, and it's certainly something that's gotten easier to kind of pick out 3 things. And there have definitely been moments during the day where something will happen and I'll immediately put it in my phone because I think it's, a good thing that I should write down later.
So I don't know why I'm so loud in here. Maybe it's because I'm hearing myself looping back through in here. So how do you think that kind of stuff? What else do you do as far as like meditation and kind of like self-care that you think helps contribute to? Because you do a lot. Like your day is packed from school and having to work. So you're still taking classes. You're still having to write papers. You still have to go to work and 8 or 10 hours a day kind of thing. Plus observation hours and all that stuff. Plus training and playing sports and stuff or coaching sports. Are you playing anything now?
No, just coaching. I have 4 or 5 sessions this week, and then starting next week I have another 3 that I'm adding to my schedule on Mondays.
And like you still care about like food, the type of food that you eat, like how much sleep that you're getting. So how do you think that doing the journal stuff, and what else do you do that helps you kind of maintain such a high output with your schedule?
So my calendar is fairly organized. I do my best to try to keep up to date on that just because I have so much going on. So if that isn't updated, and there have been instances where I've forgotten to put stuff in and completely slipped my mind. So I have pretty much all my sessions that I coach in there, my work schedule. I have a Google like Excel sheet with all my assignment due dates that I can check off when those are done.
So are these all just kind of like habits that you've picked up like from school and from just managing the time?
I think so. Growing up, especially playing soccer and trying to balance honor stuff as far as school, I kind of learned how to do it when I was in high school. And then when I got to Ithaca during PT, it kind of kicked up a notch just because my schedule kind of picked up. It was a lot more coursework. It was a lot more studying hours. Between our practice times for soccer were pretty set. And then if I'd go to the gym, it'd usually be in the morning before our classes. But I think learning that kind of like time management study habit kind of took shape in PT school. And then I've kind of just added to it as I've gotten older.
So, obviously we work out together, we train here, and how big of a part do you think like that making sure that you're getting in a certain amount of exercise every week or a certain amount of training contributes to your ability to kind of like even maintain that type of schedule, like the demands of school and the stresses that kind of go with that?
Yeah, so I've always tried to work out in some capacity. I haven't played soccer now for almost 8 years. I think my last game was like in 2013-14. But then when I stopped playing, I started working out more, whether that was just in the gym with some of my classmates. I was into ultrarunning for probably 2-3 years. I met a bunch of people doing that. And then now doing CrossFit, it's always been just kind of like my 1.5, 2 hours a day that I can just kind of detox and relax and get all my kind of stress and relief out of.
So for anyone who doesn't know, ultra running is classified as what? Anything over 50 miles?
Anything over a marathon.
Anything over 26.2 miles is classified as ultra running. So there's sort of those landmarks in a runner's life of like run a 5K, run a 10K, run a half marathon, run a full marathon, and then only like the extremely insane decide like I'm going to do 50 or 100 miles. So what was it that attracted you to a 50 mile? What was it? Did you ever do 100?
No, The race I've done the longest was a 50.
Underachiever, man.
Yeah. The longest race I've ever been a part of was a 50. I only made it 35 and change.
That's disappointing.
And then my legs kind of just said, "You're done."
No.
Yeah.
No more.
No,
We're
no.
good.
I hobbled the last like 7.5 miles.
Okay, so what part of even trying to cross a 50-mile finish line attracted you to that?
I don't know if I was ever attracted to it. It's always.
Did you know what you were getting yourself into?
Yeah.
There wasn't like your friend was like, "Hey, you want to come out and try this race?"
No, that's pretty much exactly how it is.
Okay.
So my friend Melissa has been a big part of those kind of like progressive increments of not just running, but like the obstacle course races I've started doing, and just some workouts in general. She's been a big inspiration. I was never one.
Shout out to Melissa.
Yeah, I was never one of those people where I thought running, like I had no desire to ever run a marathon. I still really don't. But I had a friend in school who was a track runner. I was interested at the time in doing like Spartan races and the obstacle kind of strength stuff. So she said, "Will you run a half marathon with me?" And I said, "Only if you do Spartan with me." Like thinking she's not going to want to do it. Mm-hmm. She was 110 pounds soaking wet. And she said, "Yeah." So we started training for that together. We didn't necessarily run the half marathon together because she's light years faster than I am, but we did the Spartan together and it was great. And then I met Melissa there. She said, a group of us are doing Killington in a few months. You should come to that. Didn't necessarily know what that involved in until I kind of looked into it. And, I never wanted to say no to anything. So I was like, yeah, I'll go. How bad could it be? Started training for Killington, did that, finished, and said, all right, that's the limit of.
So for folks who don't know, Killington is like the premier Spartan race event, and it takes place in Vermont, like usually every September.
Yep.
And it has a beast, which is a 13-mile or around 13 miles. Sometimes they don't really track it very well, so you're out there for what you think is going to be 13 miles, but it's really like 15 or 16, and you're going up and down the mountains of Killington, and like that's their feature, basically, event of the year. Like it's like their world championships, or do they move it to Tahoe? Is it still
the World Championships are in Tahoe.
Okay, so they moved it to Tahoe, but a couple of years ago, Killington was like that, like holy grail of like obstacle course races. Yeah. That and the ultimate mudder, like the 24-hour tough mudder. And then they have the Ultra Beast, which is a double loop. So it's
haven't done that yet.
Yeah, that's like you're talking about a 15 or 16-hour day of just climbing mountains and like burpees.
But at the same time, I've now done a different obstacle course race called Fit Challenge that I'll be doing again for their last ever obstacle race next April.
You're retiring from obstacle course racing after that?
It's their last race, so they won't have any more obstacle races. I'm kind of retired now from it, but a group of my friends that I've met through obstacle course racing are all going to get together and make it kind of like a big reunion.
What do you think, like when you have stuff like that on the horizon, how do you think that kind of keeps you more focused in your training?
I think it gives you just something to focus on, so you know what the end goal is versus like just doing general strength training, I guess, just to stay in shape. Like, yes, you're gonna indirectly achieve your goal. You're gonna, be healthier through strength training, but like there's no set end date, and I guess until the day you die.
Right. But
yeah, I think having a set kind of focus, so you say I have 4 months to train for this, and then after that we'll see what happens.
Right. As opposed to like just showing up every day to a gym, regardless if that's here at Coalesce or like a 24-hour fitness or whatever the case is, like having some substance to the training, because on whatever May 5th or something you got to run a full marathon or something. And then in particular, I feel like the obstacle course races like force you to need to be in better than just running shape, because you have to do things like climb ropes and carry heavy, like whatever, like medicine balls or atlases, stones. So it definitely raises the stakes of your training, where just going out and jogging a lot isn't going to kind of cut it anymore.
Yeah, I think the hardest training wise for a race I've ever done was before my first beast. So before the New Jersey Beast, my senior year of college. I spent probably the month and a half-ish leading up to that. Every day I would wake up at like 5:15 a.m. I had the Spartan workout plan that they send out for the Beast, and my friend and I would do that. It involved, we didn't necessarily have like the weights and odd object carries that you would do in a Spartan, so we would use a backpack full of textbooks and go up the hill on campus for 45 minutes.
That'll do it.
It was a lot of like figuring out that kind of stuff. Just
like what it feels like to run and carry stuff.
And then the other was years later when I was training for Killington for the first time.
There was like a hot minute where I thought about getting a job on like like cutting down trees and stuff, just to like get ready for Spartan races. I only considered it for a second, but I thought about it, like just chopping down trees and carrying trunks of or like even just like working on a demo team just to carry heavy stuff around. But then I just picked up a kettlebell and walked with it instead.
So I went to Home Depot one day with my cousin because he was doing one down in Georgia where he goes to school. Both of us bought
buckets.
Bought a bucket,
filled it with rocks.
Bought a bag of sand and carried around my neighborhood for 2 hours.
That rock carry where you're filling up your sand bucket, or you're filling up a bucket and there's holes punched through the side of it, and if you carry it all the way up, you have to cover all the daylight in the holes, carry this bucket up whatever, a half mile of mountain and back down, and when you get to the bottom, one of the judges will check your bucket. If they see daylight, you gotta fill it back up and do it again.
So they
Nerve-wracking.
actually changed that. So all the buckets now are covered.
So you
they're
don't
pre-filled.
even know.
Yeah, no, they're pre-filled.
Oh, so they can't dump out.
Right.
Oh, so that's a little merciful.
Yeah.
They got soft in their old age.
That was maybe the worst part, was trying to like use your forearm to scoop the rocks in, because you're just getting shredded, and then you also have to use your forearm to carry them. That's
what I hate about Atlas stones, is like they just shred your forearms up.
I've only had one instance at Killington, because my mom was there, where I was on the I was on the Twister, which is basically a vertical monkey bar that rotates, so you're going sideways or forward and back and trying to do this monkey bar thing. Got about 3/4 of the way there and missed the handle, and the length of my palm, I lost pretty much all the skin I had on it, and then had another 8.5 miles through mud and dirt.
Yeah, the first time I did Killington, the swim was like right in the middle of, so it was like probably 6 miles in, and it was cold.
Yeah.
And I swam and didn't make it, climb the rope and try to swing across the bridge and stuff from one little rope to another to ring a bell. I fell in for sure. But then you got to swim out, and when you get out, you have to do 30 burpees. And I'm like basically doing burpees, like just shaking. And like definitely like pre-hypothermic, and then had to go run another like 6 or 7 miles.
Yeah.
And when I finished it, like I shook for probably a day and a half, probably from like borderline hypothermia.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been in that Killington swim. It's terrible, and I will say that the coldest I have ever been, and hopefully ever will be, was following their hurricane heat in Ithaca.
That's
in
when
Portland.
you run with there with like Joe DeCina and
so
stuff.
That's at night. Like, we lined up at probably 6:45, 7 o'clock at night after having ran the sprint in the morning, and we got into my car at around midnight. And this was after 4 or 5 hours of just team building / soul crushing torture in the snow at Greek Peak in Cortland in the middle of March.
Don't they do the death race?
Yep.
In like March?
Yeah, in Vermont.
That's like I've always like you always kind of think, or maybe I just do, like you always kind of think about like what's that next event that I could do that I can wrap my head around it, that would be like a big deal, like having run half marathon, and then go like I've done Killington I think twice, and then you start to think about like a death, like being cold is not something I'm like into. Like I'm okay with like an ice bath for like a little while, but like if heat is not an option for like 24 hours and they're making you swim and stuff, like that's where I kind of draw the line.
Yeah, I think during it's obviously very miserable, and then the 2-3 days after are just as miserable. And then once you have time to recover and look back on it, I think that kind of feeling of accomplishment is the reason people do it. Like, that's such a cool feeling.
Like, what do you think that does, though? Like, definitely, like, how do you think that going through those really difficult kind of challenges adds to your ability to kind of cope with life or, the other challenges that you're pursuing?
Yeah. I think especially through racing, those kind of obstacles are in a way self-inflicted. Like, no one's forcing you to be there. You signed up and paid a lot of money to do this. Mm-hmm. Like, you knew kind of hopefully what you were getting into, more or less. But once you're at that point, you have two options. It's either go forward through the obstacles and make your way through it, or stand there and live your life on the mountain, or quit,
or you just wait till you die,
just
out in the middle of the woods alone. A bear comes. Mm-hmm. There are bears out there too. It's not like you're like in the middle of the wilderness and like Yogi Bears and like decided to take the day off. Like, they're wandering around up there. I didn't see one but they definitely had staff like looking for bears.
I've had one bear sighting during a race.
Yeah, like I don't think I would respond well to that.
It was terrifying.
Yeah. But they're not like the go get you kind of bears unless they have cubs there.
Yeah. They're
not like grizzlies.
No, and you're kind of out of the way. They recognize that you're hopefully not
charging them.
Yeah, you're not a threat to them. You're just kind of making your way up the mountain and in agony. And
ain't nobody here but us bears.
Yeah.
I think that actually Spartan racing or obstacle course racing is really what got me into like the functional fitness stuff, because I remember I was just a runner and people that I was working with at Pepsi wanted to do the Rugged Maniac. Mm-hmm. And I kind of knew that I needed something more, and a friend of mine owned a CrossFit, and so I started training there, starting to do rope climbs and all that kind of stuff. And then I fell in love with CrossFit, and that really got me deeper into like the functional fitness stuff and all the maces and all kinds of swinging stuff.
Yeah, I think that kind of like progressive rabbit hole was similar to me. So like, I never wanted to run a half marathon, done that. I've had friends then convince me to do a marathon, done that. I've had friends then convince me to do an ultra because, what's another 13 miles?
Yeah, nothing.
Same thing with obstacle course racing. My first Spartan was the one and only college series they've done at Cornell, and that was nowhere close to like an actual Spartan race, so I did that.
Right, like those stadium ones.
It wasn't. I wouldn't even say it was like less than a stadium at the time. But
well, the stadiums are cool. Like if you've never done one before, but I think that because I had done so much CrossFit, by the time I got to that, it was like it was like a long CrossFit workout. It was cool to do it at Shea because I grew up like as a Mets fan, but like outside of that, it's like I could have like mimicked that course in a gym basically.
Yeah, their college one had like football tosses instead of spear throw.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, it was very it was fun. Like I had a great time, but it wasn't necessarily like the physical challenge that the actual quote Spartan races are. But I finished that and said, you know, I'll try a sprint Spartan, see what that's like. Did that and said, all right, that was a good challenge. I have no real interest in the longer ones. Like the people that do the longer ones are insane. Got convinced to do that a super, which is 8 to 10 miles. Said the same thing about doing a beast. Then got convinced to do that, and then it kind of just progressively kept going.
That's kind of how I got with the CrossFit Hero workouts. Like you do Murph, and you're like, okay, that was super hard. What else is there? And then you're like, oh. And I remember reading a Men's Health and Fitness magazine that said like Gaza was like the hardest hero workout out there. And I was like, all right, I guess I got to do that. So then I'd go through like Gaza and Clovis and Gallant. Like there's a bunch of these really long, hard CrossFit Hero workouts. And I like to do at least 3 of them a year. Usually I like to get in Murph, Gaza, and Cervase. But like those are like the same thing, you know, you're kind of in and out in like an hour or so. So it's not like this like major commitment of travel and stuff, and you can kind of do them in a gym without needing all kinds of stuff. But they definitely have that same gut check kind of feeling to them.
I have a patch, and it's probably my favorite expression as far as like doing hard workout stuff or really just anything is that sounds like a horrible idea. What time?
Yeah, right. The worse it sounds, the more apt I am to give it a go. And I don't know if it's just like that building self-esteem kind of thing where you're like, okay, I'm not sure if I could do this, but I'm going to try it anyway. And then you do it and you're like, okay, I did it. But there's still that kind of like, what's the next thing? What's the, like, always kind of like having a goal on the horizon. So the things that like motivate me now are different than they did when I was doing Spartan races and that kind of stuff. But ultimately it's the same type of solution. It's just a matter of like, what's the next goal? What do I need to be able to do physically, mentally, and emotionally in order to achieve that goal? And then just chip away at it a little bit at a time, just like in a hero workout and just like in a Spartan race. You're not gonna, you have to go through those things that you got to go through. You got to climb ropes. You got to do those, that, not Zeus hoist. What's the Hercules hoist?
Herc hoist, yeah.
That I was always good at, you know?
Yeah.
But like just having those things on the horizon, and then those little practices that you were talking about earlier, like of, you know, journaling or just, you know, time management stuff. Like if you want to get a lot done and you have these priorities, you have competing commitments that are like constantly like drawing for your attention, whether it's relationships, family, work, school. You still want to take care of yourself and train. You still want to go out with your friends and have fun. So how do you get all this stuff in? And part of it is like, you know, prioritizing and just going like, okay, I know that I want to get this stuff done, and if I get this stuff done, I know I'm going to feel better about doing all this other stuff that I don't want to do. What do you think is, like, if you had one practice that, whether it's current or something that you've done in the past, that you think would add value or time to or quality to people's time, what would that be?
I would say try the gratitude journaling that I do. It's not anything that takes, hopefully, that much time out of your day. It usually takes me 5 minutes, if that. I know I've tried, or I've explained it to a few people at our gym that I'm friends with, and they all think I'm some sort of serial killer because they struggle coming up with 3 things every day. And it's not always, you know, I don't do it every day and just instantly write down 3 things. Like, it takes me a few minutes to to kind of reflect and think of stuff, and every day is different. So it's gonna be something that takes practice. You're not gonna be good at it the first day, week, even month. But I think long term, it's kind of changed how my mind looks at each day, and
you reframe things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Like you make it. It's easy to pick out like all the things that go wrong in a day.
Of course.
You know, I woke up late. I got out the door. I hit every red light. Like, you know, from the moment you wake up, some days it's just complicated. But then to stop and be able to say, okay, well, what am I grateful for out of all this? Like, I have a car to get into to get stuck in traffic in. You know, like I have awesome podcasts that I'm listening to, including this one. If you made it this far into it, hopefully you're grateful that we're talking about it. You know, like I got 2 turntables and a microphone. You know, like whatever that's from Beck, by the way. I didn't write that.
I know.
I will though. I'll write something that'll stick in your head. So we've been recording for like 30 plus minutes. So I think any closing thoughts on gratitude or those micro habits, right? Like what are those couple habits, and like what's a first step?
I think just get a notebook and write. It doesn't even have to be, you know, the same kind of journaling that I do. It can just be your thoughts on the day, you know, something that you think of that you just want to write down. Just, you know, focus on writing something, and you'll see over time just kind of how your mind reframes itself.
And that's the doctor's orders. All right, Adam, thank you for your time. Thank you for being on Varying the Constant. See you around. A Coalesce Media production.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, dude.
Never miss a day, yo, train without pain, yo, as long as I'm observing my load with capacity. Functional diagnosis. Can you touch your toes, kid? Perhaps it's